Hello, statistics students. This is Dr. Taft again, and this is my second video, so it will continue to be rough. And this one is actually a lecture that I have not given before, so we'll see how that goes. So what I'm going to talk about today is sort of the conceptual framework that would be involved when we talk about or think about statistics. And there isn't going to be any math or anything like that, although there will probably be dogs barking in the background. So, when we were talking about statistics, for me, the thing that really motivates and brings statistics into use is uncertainty. And what I'm talking about when I say uncertainty is when you have some action that you're contemplating and that you know that it will lead to one of several possible consequences, but you don't know which of those will happen for sure. And the only way to find out which one's going to happen is to carry out the action. So that uncertainty is something that statistics helps us measure, understand, and cope with. And it uses the mathematics of probability to do that, and the materials that it uses are data, repeatable observations of the real world. Sort of the inverse, the yin to the yang of uncertainty is information. And I'm going to talk about information in terms of uncertainty. And what I'm going to have you think about, is that information consists of facts that change what we think about the possible consequences in action, especially which ones we think are more or less likely to happen with these new facts. So for example, we might learn that consequences that involve blue are more common. So that could rule out the red or the yellow outcome. Make the blue one seem like it's the most plausible. And then there's a little bit of blue in this maroonish purple, so maybe that's a possibility as well. So what we say is this information about blueness changed how we think about the relative plausibility of the consequences. So it gave us new information. So that's pretty abstract. Let's talk about a more specific example, choosing a movie. So I went to Google, and these are the 5 top movies that showed up when you said movie show terms. And so what I'm going to talk about here is an action which is choosing a film to watch. And the simplified consequences that we're going to talk about are, did you like the movie or not? So there's lots of different ways that you could choose a movie. And so I'm going to walk through some and talk about them in sort of this information uncertainty context. So one way you could do it is you could just roll a die. You could say, or flip a coin, some coins, or draw the movie names from a hat, or do something that's completely, purely random. There's nothing going on except for chance. And that would choose a movie, and you could go to it. Another option would be to pick a completely arbitrary feature, like the first film from a studio that has the letter A in its name. So nothing to do with the actual movie, but something that's remotely related. So that's what I'm calling arbitrary. The last thing you could do in this group of methods for choosing is pick by convenience. So again, this doesn't really specifically have anything to do with the movie, but you just say, well, I want to go see a movie, so whichever one's up next that I can get into, I'll go to that. So that's convenience. Hear the pitter-patter of little feet, I hope. So those 3 methods don't use or provide information, I would argue, because they don't have any relationship to how you might feel about the movie. So they shouldn't change whether you will like the movie or not once we choose it. So they're completely unrelated to the way we're talking about the consequence, and so they don't provide information. So I hope that makes some sense. It also probably means that you wouldn't want to use these methods, but that's okay. So there's some other possible ways we could choose. For example, say you love John David Washington in BlacKkKlansman and wanted to see him again in Tenet. So you might pick Tenet. And that's a personal experience. So there's something about you and about the situation that informs your decision. You could talk to friends. Check with a bunch of friends, see which movie they liked, if they've seen some, or which one they've been thinking of, and maybe go with the most popular choice. Another possible thing that you could do is consult experts. So they're not people you know personally, but they have a reputation for being knowledgeable about movies. And so, even though both these guys are dead, so they wouldn't be good choices, they are iconic for movie critics, so I picked them. You choose that person's recommendation. Or maybe you know that there are a lot of experts, but there's no specific expert that you want to consult with, and so you go to a site like Rotten Tomatoes that aggregates a whole bunch of different opinions and choose the movie that has the highest number of favorable ratings. So to argue that these 3 or 4 different approaches do use and provide information, because they directly connect the consequence you're looking at, whether you're going to like the movie or not, with the characteristics of the movie. And so by providing that connection, they give us more information and make you more or less likely to choose some of the movies than others. And I would also argue that the general approach that I talked about, whether it's thinking about your personal taste or talking to friends or consulting critics or experts, you could use that same process for all these other things. I'm not going to read all of them, but I came up with some of them and I hope they're amusing. The idea is that you can use the same approach across contexts regardless of the exact decision you're making. And that's really how statistics works. Statistics gives us a way to measure uncertainty across a whole bunch of different kind of contexts. And so instead of saying something like how many friends like it, actually, you could literally use that as a statistic, but it becomes a measure, which we'll talk about later, and it becomes something you can use to make your decision. So it's decision-making rules, which we're going to learn about in much more detail, and ways to implement them. So I hope that helps a little bit, and if it didn't, that's okay. It's my fault.